Dear listeners, welcome to our Leader Project presentation. In our team, there are four members from EAP Group 29, namely Kamilla Isahunova, Nurassyl Mangelde, Dana Shortan, and Ablay Abdimadinov. For our Leader Project, we chose Lee Kuan Yew, as he is a famous and highly influential political individual in Singapore. And the aim of our presentation is to examine and identify to what extent can Lee Kuan Yew's leadership be considered exemplary for political leaders despite his authoritarian methods. I would like to start our presentation by briefly outlining the talk. Firstly, we're going to provide a description of his biographical background. Then we're going to make evaluation of some of his cases. And finally, we're going to make an analysis of his leadership approaches, styles, and techniques. And in the end, we're going to make a conclusion. To commence with, Lee Kuan Yew is the first Prime Minister of Singapore and widely recognized as the founding father of Singapore. In our opinion, it is important to start off by saying that he was born into an English-educated Chinese family, and there was an important role of his grandfather, who has been described as having a westernized mindset. And also, Lee Kuan Yew was educated on English language, and further, he received his higher educational degrees in Raffles College and Fitzwilliam College, Cambridge. After graduation, he worked as a lawyer of the Middle Temple in England and campaigned for the United Kingdom to make Singapore independent. Furthermore, in 1954, he co-founded the People's Action Party, which was the opposition to the chief ministers of Singapore. In 1955 and 1959, he won his first seat and became the state's first prime minister. Moreover, Singapore got independence from United Kingdom, and in 1965, Singapore separated from Malaysia. Since Singapore separated from Malaysia, it had racial tensions, economical, social, and political problems. And Lee Kuan Yew has made enormous, significant contributions to making Singapore from third world country to the first world country. And his actions, decisions which were beneficial can be seen on the left side of the slide, which are anti-corrupt government and which was based on the values and ideologies of Lee Kuan Yew, which were meritocracy and multiracialism. Meritocracy is a political system where economic goods and political power are distributed among those who gain them through efforts, work, and achievements rather than social class or wealth. Also, he adopted multiracialism, which was needed when Singapore had a mixed population of Malaysians, Chinese, and Indians, and in order to unite them and keep Singapore united and independent, Lee Kuan Yew needed to make decisions according to this value. So one of his decisions was languages policy. He made English language as a business, linking, and trade language, while also preserving Asian values and ethnicities of the cultures in Singapore by making official languages of Malaysians, Chinese, and Indians. Also, he um, made policies according to housing, army, and greening, which will be more analyzed in the next section of our presentation. And also, he had a view of communitarianism, which means that an individual is directly connected to the community of its state. So, despite these important and um, enormous contributions, Lee Kuan Yew had, and it can be believed that Lee Kuan Yew had an authoritarian leadership style. And this authoritarian leadership style can be seen through his actions such as restricting press freedom, defamating to opponents, and limiting public protests. So there was not a freedom of speech for the citizens of Singapore. On the other hand, uh, it might be believed by some people that this authoritarian leadership was benevolent for Singapore, which means that these kinds of actions were needed for Singapore and its stage of developing.
Evaluation. In this section, we will evaluate the effectiveness and ethics of the leader by reviewing two cases. In order to do so, we will define effectiveness and ethics in leadership as criteria. Effectiveness is the degree to which something is successful in producing a desired result, and ethics will be considered as a moral correctness of specified conduct. The first case that we are going to evaluate is the formation of the Singaporean army. In 1965, Singapore was not a country in a good condition except for the presence of a UK military base. One of the factors was that most of the police forces were represented by Malays, which was a cause for a series of problems. On 1st February 1966, when rioting had broken out at an army training depot, the army commander, after misunderstanding instructions, has discharged all Malay recruits. This evolved into a riot, which was stopped, and Lee Kuan Yew sorted this problem out by speaking to rioters in Malay and assuring that every Singaporean citizen was able to come back to normal training on the following day. This speech brought applause and cheers. The reason for this riot was not published in papers, and the case was covered up, which was one of the first cases when Lee Kuan Yew censored the press of Singapore. This case and other circumstances have forced the government to build up the armor quickly. Lee Kuan Yew and the defense prime minister were willing to build an army from scratch. In order to do so, they have started looking for a country that would have helped them to shape their armed forces. They had to take an example of a little country which has been regularly defending their territory from enemies. They have proceeded with Israelis, but to keep it from becoming public knowledge for as long as possible so as not to provoke grassroots antipathy from Malayan Muslims. At that time, Israelis had asked Lee Kuan Yew for official recognition and ambassador exchange. Due to unstable relationships with border countries, they haven't agreed to do so, but they allowed a trade representative office. Afterwards, when Malay Muslims accustomed to an Israeli presence, they allowed their embassy. Among the techniques that Israelis have taught Singaporean armed forces, they have adopted a plan of mobilizing the maximum number possible in the shortest time possible. They wanted to make an emphasis on reserves rather than on regular army. The work that Lee Kuan Yew and his cabinet have done evolved into a change in National Service Ordinance by 1971. They had 16,000 men in national service and 11,000 in the reserves. In addition to this, the cabinet trained their first pilots and sailors for both air and naval forces using the help of Britain and New Zealand. Singaporean soldiers that were learning from Israelis took over as instructors. National service has had a profound impact on Singapore society over the last 30 years. It has become a rite of passage for young men and a part of the way of life that has helped to unify the people of Singapore.
To continue the evaluation, I would like to admit the greenery policy of Lee Kuan Yew. He have done lots of work in greening the Singapore. He resolved such problems as uh, cattle stray. He used propaganda to make mindset of population better. He planted millions of trees, which is uh, by the way, greenery is not just only planting millions of trees. However, it was also done. It is also about banning bad habits such as chewing gums, cigarettes, spitting. He resolved such problems as noise pollution. He made for farmers more convenient places, areas which are farther from the center of Singapore. And also he worked with illegal workers, illegal taxi drivers, and licensing of them. Uh, I would like to, in details, tell you more about these actions that he he have banned spitting habits through making penalties on it, uh, putting very high fines on people who did some spitting, and also he banned cigarettes. He started to make propaganda through schools that also spitting and cigarettes will lead to tuberculosis, and such diseases are very dangerous for Singaporean people, of course, for everyone. But the problem in Singapore was really severe, and also he tried to give lots of new workplaces, vacancies for illegal taxi drivers and unlicensed workers. Uh, However, despite that, he had lots of lots of measurements which were very effective. There were some analytical actions uh, which should be told, of course. Authoritarian leadership of him was too strict for our new modern world, and his use of death penalties, um, his behavior of giving no attempts for guilty people to be advocated. He's using propaganda, putting too much high taxes and uh, penalties are very harsh and cruel in terms of humanity morals.
Let's move to the next part of our presentation, which is analysis. Here we will analyze cases described in the previous evaluation part and tell you about leadership skills and qualities manifested by Lee Kuan Yew. So our first example is media control. The restriction of freedom of expression in Singapore is a good demonstration of Lee Kuan Yew's authoritarian method to lead. Willing to save balance between cultures and not to contribute to inciting strife between citizens from different cultures with diverse worldviews, Lee demonstrated his conflict resolution skills and cultural intelligence. It could be argued if it was ethical, but it was effective and it worked since Lee was aware of weaknesses of his followers and could weigh both positive and negative sides of this problem and make a rational decision and censor media. So our next point is army development. It should be considered that Lee Kuan Yew was an extraordinary diplomat and he used his negotiating skills by convincing Britain not to take out the military objects from the city of Singapore because he needed them for his future goals. And once again, Lee Kuan Yew was a culturally sensitive person, and as Ablay said, he knew that locals didn't used to appreciate their army, so he instilled military admiration to Singaporeans. And actually, ability to inspire and motivate people is a crucial factor of transformational leadership. And as Ablay said, developing an army, Lee Kuan Yew demonstrated his managerial style of leadership and integrity. So let's move to the point I want you to pay attention to, which is techniques adaptation. Lee learned from the best. Being observant, he noticed only best ideas from the countries of the West and the East and tried to implement them to the Singapore. It is a good manifestation of research skill. Also, he created a good diplomatic relations with Egypt, Malaysia, Israel, New Zealand, and demonstrated his clear communication skills. He was aware of both strong and weak sides of his economics and military. That's why he could take only best experience from each country.
And I would like to continue the analysis. In When he was banning spitting habits, he showed his authoritarian leadership style through making decisions on his own. However, he showed transformational style by affecting people and making them upgrading. And also, he used some rhetorics and effective feedback through giving some logical sequence, such as spitting will lead to tuberculosis, and it was very logical sequence, which was really persuasive for population. And uh, just in this case, it is seen that very it was a situation of Singaporean culture, like it was kind of unique problem of them. That is why here it can be described through the situational leadership theory. Uh, Lee Kuan Yew acted through lenses of situation. And also, he stopped illegal workers, attracted educated youths. What does it mean? That he is transformational leader. We can say you because he have been trying to uh, enhance their he have been upgrading all these people, tried to work with them, but not just only with himself. He was aware of strengths of Singapore because educated youth is the most valuable item of strength anywhere. And also their weaknesses were illegal workers, which was solved, of course, through his methods, through his policy, which shows also his empathy and meritocracy, by the way, because of his beliefs that only educated youths will do their best and will know how to do effective work. About bans on advertising cigarettes, here we see his Asian values because they are tend to be refusing falling into bad habits. And also, this shows rational decision making because the problem exists and it needed a step-by-step plan which shouldn't be implemented immediately. That is why he was rational decision maker and bit creative, motivator, and also authoritarian because of his propaganda through schools, through YAS, and through messaging from them to everyone. So there is a question: is it better to be effective or ethical for a leader? And we decided to conclude that leader may be ethical or unethical. However, he must be effective because um, also Lee Kuan Yew used such death penalty or uh, some really strict, harsh, severe methods to make their country better. But indeed, he made Singapore to move from the third world country to the first world country because he was effective. He made everything through making the purpose to be effective, not ethical.